Imagine walking outside tomorrow morning without shoes, not across your bedroom carpet, across actual ground, hot pavement, sharp gravel, dry, cracked dirt, loose stones, rough, uneven rock. Now imagine doing it for several miles. Then imagine doing it again tomorrow, and the day after that. No sneakers, no hiking boots, no cushioned soles, just your feet against the ground. For much of human history, people often moved barefoot or with simple forms of foot protection. And that raises a strange question. How did ancient humans walk so far without the footwear we consider essential today? Because if you tried to copy them tomorrow, your feet would probably complain very quickly. Blisters, cuts, sore muscles, burning skin. So what did they know that we don't? When was the last time you walked barefoot somewhere your feet didn't already know? Not your bedroom, not your kitchen, somewhere unfamiliar, somewhere your feet had to figure out the ground as you moved across it. Most of us probably can't remember. Modern life has quietly removed almost every problem our feet originally had to solve. Shoes, socks, soft carpets, smooth floors, paved roads. Layer after layer between your skin and the world. And it's tempting to say modern shoes simply made our feet weak, but that's too easy. The truth is more interesting. Modern footwear didn't necessarily make human feet worse. It changed the mechanical environment in which they operate. Different world, different demands. And to understand how ancient humans managed difficult ground, we first have to look at the feet themselves. Because the human foot is a remarkable piece of biological engineering. Your heel takes the initial load. Your arch helps distribute forces and contributes to the foot's ability to become both flexible and relatively stiff at different points in a step. Your Achilles tendon can store and release elastic energy, and your big toe is aligned forward, helping provide a powerful push-off. None of this makes your feet indestructible. It makes them efficient. Every step is a small mechanical negotiation between your body and the ground. Impact, compression, adjustment, push-off, again and again and again, thousands of times. Your foot isn't simply a platform underneath your body. It's part spring, part lever, and part sensor. That last part matters more than most people realize. Because when you walk barefoot, your feet are constantly receiving information from the ground. Texture, pressure, temperature, slope, small stones, loose surfaces, tiny changes in balance. Your nervous system uses that information to adjust how you move. A step lands slightly differently. Your muscles respond. Your weight shifts. Your next step changes, often before you've consciously noticed anything happened. Put a thick sole between your foot and the ground, and some of that information changes. That isn't necessarily bad. It's the reason shoes are so useful. But imagine living in a world where your feet received that information every time you moved. You would learn the ground differently. And that's where ancient humans had an advantage that had nothing to do with having tougher feet. They had experience, because barefoot movement was never about crossing every surface on Earth without a second thought. Ancient humans didn't have invincible feet. They had environmental knowledge. They knew which paths were easier, which ground was loose, where sharp rocks collected, where thorns grew, where the surface became dangerously hot, where the terrain changed after rain, and where it was simply better to slow down. Survival wasn't about making the body immune to the environment. It was about learning how to move through it. Think about walking across a room in complete darkness. You don't suddenly become a different human. You become more careful. Your steps shorten. Your body becomes more alert. You use whatever information you can get. Ancient humans were doing something similar with the ground beneath them, except they had been practicing for years. And the first layer of that adaptation was the simplest one: skin. Repeated friction and mechanical stress can cause the skin on the soles of the feet to thicken. Calluses develop where the body repeatedly experiences pressure and friction. They don't turn your feet into armor, but they can provide some protection while still allowing useful sensory feedback, and that balance matters. Because completely losing sensitivity would actually be a problem. You need to know when something is too sharp, too hot, too painful, too unstable. Pain isn't always the enemy. Sometimes it's information. A bare foot stepping onto a sharp stone gets an immediate message: move, change your weight, don't step there again. That information can change the next step before a small problem becomes a serious injury. But here's something worth saying plainly. Ancient humans got hurt: cuts, blisters, puncture wounds, burns, injured toes, infections. There is no reason to imagine ancient feet were somehow immune to the problems that affect feet today. And without modern medicine, some injuries could become extremely serious. So the remarkable thing isn't that ancient humans never damaged their feet, it's that they developed ways of moving through the world while constantly managing that possibility. That's resilience, not invincibility. And every type of ground created a different problem. Take sand. It looks soft. But walking through loose sand can require more effort because the ground shifts beneath you instead of providing a firm surface for push-off. Rock creates a different problem. It demands careful placement. Your foot has to find stable points while your body constantly adjusts to uneven surfaces. Dry, broken ground can hide loose stones and sharp fragments. And then there's heat. A surface exposed to intense sunlight can become much hotter than the air above it. Your feet are then dealing with heat, pressure, and friction at the same time. Ancient humans couldn't simply ignore that. They had to recognize when the ground was becoming dangerous. And sometimes the solution wasn't tougher feet, it was better timing. Travel during cooler parts of the day. Choose shade when possible. Take a route with more forgiving terrain. Avoid the hottest exposed surfaces. Slow down when the ground becomes difficult. This is where adaptation becomes behavior. Survival isn't always about changing the body. Sometimes it's about changing what the body does. And that is one of the biggest differences between ancient survival and the way we imagine it. We picture a stronger body overcoming everything, but real survival is often much less dramatic. It's knowing when to stop, knowing where to step, knowing which route is safer, knowing what your body is telling you. And that knowledge starts early. Picture an ancient child walking beside an adult. They're not suddenly expected to cross 10 kilometers of rough terrain on their first day. They grow up learning. They step on different surfaces. They feel what hurts. They watch where adults place their feet. They learn which paths are comfortable, which rocks are dangerous, which areas become hot during the afternoon, where thorns grow close to the ground, where the earth becomes soft after rain. Nobody needs to stand there and give a lecture. The environment itself becomes the teacher, and the knowledge becomes part of the body. This is what makes ancient survival so fascinating. Much of it wasn't stored in books. It wasn't written on a map. It wasn't explained in a classroom. It was remembered through movement. An adult knows the safest route. A child follows. The child repeats it. Years later, that child knows the route too. Then someone else follows them. Knowledge moves through generations without ever being written down. And this is where the group becomes part of the survival system. One person doesn't need to discover every dangerous surface personally. Someone else already has. An elder remembers which route becomes difficult after heavy rain. A hunter knows which ground is easier to cross quietly. A parent knows where children can walk safely. A traveler remembers which path stays firm during a certain season. The landscape becomes a shared memory, and that shared memory can be just as valuable as physical strength. But here's where the story gets more complicated. Because the title says ancient humans walked without shoes. And that's not entirely the story. Humans did use footwear. The problem is that some of the earliest footwear was made from materials like leather, hide, bark, or plant fibers. And those materials don't survive thousands of years nearly as well as stone. A stone tool can survive for an extraordinary length of time. A piece of woven plant fiber usually can't, so the archaeological record of early footwear is incomplete. That means we shouldn't pretend we know exactly when the first human put something around their foot. But evidence suggests footwear has a very long history, and that changes the question. Maybe the interesting question isn't, why didn't ancient humans wear shoes? Maybe it's, why did humans need shoes at all? That single shift changes the story. Footwear wasn't proof that humans were incapable of moving barefoot. It was technology, a way of changing the relationship between the human body and the ground. It could provide protection from cold, from sharp surfaces, from heat, from rough terrain, and it could make certain environments easier to cross. This fits into a much bigger pattern in human history. Ancient humans didn't only adapt their bodies to the world, they adapted the world around their bodies. Fire changed what food could become. Shelter changed how much exposure the body had to weather. Containers changed how water could be carried. Tools changed what could be hunted, cut, gathered, and processed. And footwear changed the terms of contact between the human body and the ground itself. That is the bigger story. Humans don't survive simply by becoming tougher. They survive by finding ways to reduce the problems their environment creates. And eventually, technology becomes one of those ways. Now think about your own feet. When you walk outside today, how much of the actual ground do they experience? Almost none. There's rubber, foam, fabric. a carefully engineered sole. You don't directly feel most of the temperature changes beneath you. You don't feel every tiny stone. You don't constantly adjust to every irregularity in the surface. And that's not a criticism of shoes. Modern footwear is an incredible piece of technology. It allows you to walk across surfaces that would have been painful, dangerous, or simply exhausting without protection. But it changed something. It changed how much information your feet receive from the ground, and the old system hasn't disappeared. It's still inside you. Step barefoot onto a cold floor and your body reacts. Step on a small stone and your weight shifts instantly. Walk across hot ground and your foot pulls away before you've even finished thinking about what happened. Your feet are still sensing, still adjusting, still negotiating with the surface beneath you. The difference is that most of the time, you don't need them to, because your shoes are doing part of the job. And maybe that's the most interesting thing about modern life. We haven't lost the ancient machinery. We've built technology around it. Ancient humans didn't survive difficult ground because they were magically tougher than we are. They survived through a combination of biology, gradual adaptation, experience, environmental knowledge, careful movement, cooperation, and eventually technology. They didn't need to be immune to the ground. They needed to understand it. They needed to know where to step, when to slow down, when to change direction, when to stop, and when protection was worth carrying. That's a very different picture of ancient humans, not primitive people with superhuman bodies, but people constantly learning how to negotiate with the world around them. And that brings us back to your feet. Tomorrow morning, put them on the floor. Walk across your room. You probably won't think about the ground at all. Why would you? It's smooth, it's familiar, it's safe. But your ancestors spent an enormous portion of human history negotiating with that ground every single day. One step, then another. Reading the surface, adjusting the body, remembering the route, learning from the people around them, and eventually building something that changed the relationship completely. A shoe. We didn't stop adapting to the ground. We simply built something between our feet and it. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to Back Times, hit the bell icon, and share this video with someone who loves history.